What's up, guys? I read this book, it's by Angela Duckworth. It's called Grit, and I think that will come up on the phone, not opposite like it is with my view. But grit, it's basically about the concept of grit, what it actually means, how you develop it, some examples of it, how to parent grit, or how to teach it in children, how to develop it in yourself. So it's an excellent book, and I want to just talk about a fragment of it right here, and it's how to help develop grit in children. Basically what grit is, so I'll give a quick definition. It's consistency. It's doing something and continuing to work on that thing with some interest. So it's like, for example, if you were a basketball player and you enjoyed playing basketball, well, the difference between school and basketball for a lot of kids who enjoy basketball is in school they feel challenged, but they feel unmotivated. When they hang out with their friends, they're having fun, but they're not necessarily being challenged. But when they're doing an extracurricular activity that they enjoy, like in some cases for kids, basketball, they feel like they're being challenged and they're having fun. So in a sense, it's that challenge is making them feel like they're growing, and they're enjoying the experience. And it's not always fun, like when you're training and whatever you're doing, sometimes it's difficult, but there are payoffs to that. You get better. Maybe you improve your body, whatever it is. It could be playing violin. It's not always easy to play violin, but when you're practicing. But as you get better, if you do enjoy it, then you become you can play more interesting songs. You can perform in front of people and feel confident and become fluid in whatever you're doing. So that's kind of what grit is about in my words. I think there's a definition here. I'm just going to use that. I'm going to say that it's different than passion, and that passion can be really hot in the moment. Oh my God, I'm so into this. And then, you're off to the next thing. Where grit, it's like a long-term sustaining thing. And if you have, one or two life goals that you are always reaching towards, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't shift your goals, or you don't shift your occupations or your interests. But if you can find some overarching goal, then no matter how much you shift, you're always still striving towards that thing. So for me, for example, I learned my overarching goal in life is to continue to achieve and grow in that respect. And for me, that just means it's not necessarily about having to be the best at whatever it is I'm doing, but just being able to do what I say. So for example, if I say, I'm going to make videos almost every day, well then I'm going to do that. And this I feel very comfortable doing. I'm signed up for a half Ironman. That's what I'm committed to. All I'm interested in is finishing. Maybe next year, once I finish it, my next goal will be getting it done in a certain time. Maybe I'll go do something else. Maybe I'm get bored of doing half Ironman. So how you can develop this in kids is, the author Angela has this story about how she saw her daughter trying to open up a jar of raisins, and she couldn't do it, and so she kind of just gave up. And Angela, being a grit, this is what she studies, she kind of freaked out. So she was trying to be a supportive and demanding parent, in that she encouraged her child to try again and open up the jar. And she said, you can do it, give it another shot. And her child kind of just gave up, and she was like, no, I can't, it's impossible. So she ended up signing her up for ballet that day. And the reason for that is because grit is actually enhanced by extracurricular activities. And this is for two reasons. One, there is an adult in charge that is typically not the parent. That's not always the case. My dad co-coached me in soccer when I was in kindergarten, and I really loved that experience. And I think that that's great, when parents, are coaches for their kids and loving, supporting, and also, demanding. My dad told me, and I'm very proud of this. He told me he never had to push me, because I'd always be driven. But, as I'll cover later, he definitely was supportive and definitely encouraging in times when I did want to give up. So not necessarily in soccer, but I'll get to that at one point. So the reason that you want a parent that's in charge, that's not an adult that's in charge that's not the parent, is because a parent can be biased. A parent can see the kid through rose-colored glasses. A parent can be overly difficult on a child. There's so many reasons for that. And then on the flip side, the child might not listen to the parent because, they see them as their mom or their dad, not necessarily their coach. And I've seen instances of this happen too. But they may be more likely to listen to someone that they don't see in that light. And also a coach, not being the parent, can see a child typically through that through an unbiased lens. So that also, extracurricular activities are designed to cultivate interest, practice, purpose, and hope. And all of these things that I just named, interest, being actually fascinated with what you're doing and wanting to explore it and get better at it. And the practice is, that actual development of whatever that skill, whatever that interest is. The purpose is having reason behind what you do to grow yourself, to be more, to be better in competition, which, the thing that kind of fuels that is just developing yourself and developing your will a lot of the time, and just seeing your overall growth in whatever you're working on. And also hope. I don't like that word. I like the word faith better, but that's just during times of, being up, you're going to have ups and downs. So during times where you feel discouraged, it's being able to get back up and go, okay, that's all right. We're gonna keep working on this, and that's such a great attitude in life in a lot of ways. Excuse me. Not that there are times when it's okay to walk away and understand that this isn't working out, but there are other times where walking away is actually not the best thing to do. And if you push a little, I don't want to say push, but if you get up and go at whatever you're doing again, you will be successful. Especially if you have an interest in whatever you're doing, you're going to have ups and downs. Even when I make videos, I'll have the first half of my video will be really good, and then the second half, maybe I messed up or something, and I decide, I'm just going to either record the whole thing over again or record a chunk of it, and I'll put them together, and it's going to be okay. And it's just this is the practice, you know what I mean? So in terms of, let's see, so the playing fields of grit can be anything from, the ballet studio, the recital hall, the school newspaper, the dojo, the basketball court, okay, the gridiron, the debate team, even school and classes. But for kids especially, we're thinking of extracurricular activities as things happening outside of the classroom. An example of grit in the classroom, Angela, when she was younger, when she was in college, she had a course that she was doing poorly in, and as opposed to dropping out, she chose to follow through. She ended up getting a B, and it dropped her grade point average from a 4.0 to something lower than that. But she said for her, that was the most satisfying B she's ever gotten, or satisfying grade she's ever gotten in her life, because she worked so much for it, and it showed her, her will and stuff. And obviously, you don't have to do that, and you might not agree with her on that subject. You might want to, drop the class if you're not doing too well, and then start over. But these are just examples of ways you can use this, and she actually practices that with her children. I don't think they're allowed to withdraw from classes because she wants them to get in the habit of, following through and getting back on your feet. So that's kind of a nice thing, that her focus isn't necessarily on the grade point average; it's actually on the experience itself, which is cool. But at least for her kids, the evidence to support this concept. Okay, so for all you guys who are really into statistics and stuff, this won't be boring, but this is the studies behind this are kind of incomplete in that parents are not going to randomly assign their kids to different sports just for research, because this is their kids' lives. They're not going to say, "Oh, Johnny, you're going to do debate team because you're in this research study." Like, if Johnny wants to play basketball, and also, scientists can't force kids to stay in and out of activities, for a research study. So there are no, really sophisticated studies in that respect on young kids and grit and sports or extracurricular activities. I keep saying sports, but I mean this is like instruments. This is this could be volunteering. Like, this is all sorts of things. This being said, extracurricular. I think I might have said this, but I'm going to repeat this. Extracurricular activities. Students and kids report being challenged and also having fun. Whereas in school, a lot of kids feel challenged, but they're not necessarily having fun, or they're not necessarily interested. Or they're unmotivated, I guess. Not always, but it can be. And when they're hanging out with their friends, they're having fun, but they're not really being challenged. So extracurricular activities, it creates this environment that's great for grit, because there is an interest and there's a challenge. So there's fuel for growth there, because there's motivation and there's also obstacles. So it's very cool. What they see with kids, though, and there is research on this, is that kids who participate in one or more extracurricular activities typically have better grades, higher self-esteem, are less likely to get in trouble as well. And I'll tell you, like, when I was in school, whenever I was involved in extracurricular activity, I would do great. When I had too much free time, and it's okay to have too much free time, it's okay to experience that, because you learn too, and sometimes it's nice to have a little break. But, you start filling up your time with stuff that's probably not the best for you, and when you are involved in extracurricular activity, you're getting out your energy, your creativity, your expression, you're spending time doing something. Then when you come home, those other things are a little bit more novel, as opposed to having all that space and stuff, So everyone uses that time differently. Maybe if you have more free time, you're more creative. But in this instance, this is kind of what they're finding in general. So they also found the same conclusion for longer term studies. So kids later in life had better outcomes, if they were still involved in extracurricular activities, which is cool. So there are long-term studies on this topic. In the practical use, how you can use this for your kids: sign a child up for at least one extracurricular activity outside of class of their choice, and let them experiment. If they want to quit, allow that, because they can try different things. But when children are around the age of, like when they're when they're in high school, or closing in on that, require them to finish out the season. Require them to, commit to the year or whatever, because when when you do this, when you say to them, okay, you're becoming an adult now, if you're going to sign up for gymnastics, the rule is, now that you're in high school, that you have to finish out the season, or finish out the year or whatever. Even if you don't like it, even if it's a challenge for you, stick with it. And if you enjoy it, great. If you don't end up enjoying it, no matter, throughout the whole season, you can quit and be proud. You can quit after you're done with the season and be proud that, you had the focus and the ability to stick with this. And now you can go choose something else that is maybe more interesting, because this gets kids into the habit of commitment, and which is a really, really healthy thing to do. So, excuse me. So like I said, as a child, you have more flexibility. And as you get a little older, try to set the foundation for that development in grit by, asking the commitment of your kids. So anyway, Steve Young, a very famous quarterback. He was a Hall of Fame quarterback. His parents were, very loving, but also very demanding. And they would be supportive of him, throughout school. His mother, he had separation anxiety, and his mother sat with him in middle school until he sat behind the class until he felt comfortable going to school. His father would allow him to talk about his feelings. They would express to each other, and they were very loving in that respect. But when he was in college, he was actually the 8th string quarterback, and he was part of the Hamburger Squad, which was the team during practice. It was basically the group that got its butt kicked by the starters. So the defensive starters and the team, kids that were 4 years older than them, would just, demolish them throughout the practice. So they weren't important. When you're 8th string quarterback, you're kind of a throwaway, unfortunately. So they use you as a hit dummy. So he was so distraught from that experience, he asked his dad if he could go home. And his dad said, if you quit, you're not going to have a home to come back to. So Steve stuck with it. He worked his butt off. He ended up becoming so successful in college. And then, he went to the NFL. He was playing under Joe Montana, which was, if you know Joe Montana, he was a Hall of Fame quarterback. And when Joe left, Steve took over. And so it's that whole song and dance all over again, kind of the underdog. And he worked his butt off with the same grit that he developed, when he was younger. And he became a Hall of Fame quarterback. So, there are stories of this. There are stories of grit, prevailing and being a wonderful thing. For me, my dad, I was really verbally abused by my coaches my very first day of football. It was my third year of football. And I trained all summer by myself, on my own, because I wanted to make such a good impression. And the first day, the coaches needed to choose somebody to pick on. And they saw me, and they told the team that I swore, and everyone had to run because of me. And I said I didn't swear, because I didn't. But as it turns out, this is a ritual that they do every year to set the culture of the team, which is kind of sick to me. But anyway, I got pretty verbally abused, a little bit physically abused. They smacked me around the pads a little bit. But I stuck with it. It was very hard showing up to practice, kind of getting that abuse for no reason. But I ended up proving to the coaches that I was a very valuable player, and I worked hard. And I broke my hand. I still played the season with a soft cast, and it really changed my perspective on life. I understood the distance of my own will, which I did before, but I think to a whole different degree. I learned that you can't please everybody. My head coach had a chip on his shoulder. No matter what I did, no matter how friendly or kind I was towards him, no matter how hard I tried and worked on the field, he never liked me. But the other coaches loved me. So that's his problem. And that's what I learned. That's another huge lesson in life I learned at a very early age, 13. So So there's some wonderful things that come with grit. I know this is a little bit long-winded, but I hope this is helpful, and I'm gonna probably do more on this topic. And yeah, this is just a fragment of this wonderful subject. So have a good one, guys. Peace, peace. Much love.